Well, right. Hello, everybody, once again. Just going to minimize my screen while we wait for people to join. Get me back to somewhere where I started. Thanks, Jill. Back with us again. I did have a rush round. I'm just going to disappear for 2 seconds because I've changed something and it's not for the better because the light's in my eyes. So let's just change that. Let's just change it up there a little bit, see if that is better. No, it's actually worse. So sorry about this, folks. Studio problems. Change it back to where it was. Don't play with what wasn't too bad. So we're getting back. We're getting one or two back again. Hello, Paul, Graham. Pleased to see you all coming back. I hope that you enjoyed the first half. It's sort of a little bit basic. Basic. That's the wrong word. I was just reading basic. It's a bit different for me to be doing something like this. I've now got a shadow on myself as well, so I've mucked the lighting up totally. Let me change it. Just waiting for people to come back now. Not sure. I'm not sure what I've actually done. I don't think I've done anything else. It might have been there before. But it is it's just a bit annoying. I'm just looking what I've done different, but never mind. Hi, Jim. Yeah, I've just been out clapping as well. There was a lot of people up our street who were clapping, and I must admit, I don't know whether any of you today saw the news, but I think and believe it was a lady from Lincoln Hospital who's just getting better, and she gave an account of what it's been like, and it must be hell. She sounded terrible now, so it's absolutely devastating for everybody around the world. So, right, welcome Viv, Sue, and Gail. I'm I was just about to say something, Gail. I was just going to say I'm glad you're back from your clap, but we'll not go there. I'm just, whilst we're waiting, just another minute or two. I'm just going to see if I can get rid of that shadow. Right, sorry about that, folks. As you know, this is my first time, so I like the smiley faces. It's my first time, so it's all going to be a little bit. It's new to me, so it does mean that I'm going to make one or two little mistakes in these early days. If any of you are looking and listening, then you want to be going to the Sports Photography Part 2. Sports Photography Part 2. Just for those that have come back at the moment and are with me, then don't forget, before you leave, to make sure that you subscribe. It'll just help the channel to grow and get a few more followers, and hopefully by the time we've finished, a few more of our members watching. Graham Halliday just informed me at the break that we was up to 20 people, and I think that's a really good number for the beginning and our first my first effort at doing this live stream for the club. I think it's a good thing. I think it's something that during this time where we can't get out, that, you know, it brings us together still. And I must admit, even in the comments, the live chat comments that's been going on, you've been welcoming each other. I think that's good. You know, it's still that it's doing Jim's job, you know, the handshake at the door. And it's just, I love the welcoming feel of the club. So hi Sam, just noticed you dropped in to say hello. Mark's back. Hi Mark. Caroline's back. Caroline, you go right up to the top. Having a name beginning with C, you're top of the list. So, right, we're past the 10 past now. So I will just get things in the right place. I like your comment, Jill. I like your comment. So, right. I hope, as I say right at the very beginning, for anybody that's joined us in this second half that wasn't with us in the first half, I hope you're all well, staying safe, managing to get all of the things that you need, and managing to get a bit of exercise and doing all of the various I've just seen Caroline's comment there, and getting the exercise and all the things that you need, and hopefully not getting too bored. We you know, I think I haven't had time to get bored in the last week. I've been working out how the hell to do all of this. I've not necessarily mastered it at all totally. I've probably got it about 10%. I can do what I'm doing now, and that's about me lot. So right, somebody's just had a count up. We're up to 15. So we've dropped 5 in the break there. I'm just going to have a quick slurp of water. Hello, Jan. That's not gin jam. Yeah, it's not gin jam. It's water. Don't laugh. I missed my mouth. Dribbled down my front. Right. Let's get on. Just notice you are exactly halfway through. Well done. Oh, am I? 15. Oh, yes. Well done. Oh, I am, aren't I? Right. Well, yeah, I think let me just have a final look just before we set off again. I'm showing 17, but then I'm going to leave the counting up to other people because I haven't got time to I haven't got time to keep looking at the comments and what I'm supposed to be saying at the same time. Hi Sam, thanks for the message there. Jim's just put now 17. One of us can tell the time. Hang on, what time did you log on? I said 10 past. Right. I hope you've got the big telly on, Ray. I'm still here, minus the beard, if you didn't recognise. I can't see you. Right, let's go on to the next slide. So we're now going to slide 16. So it's 16 and it says the basics of panning. Now, I must admit that it's not easy when you sat down to try and show people how to do the basics of panning. But I think you all have the process. Now, the process is to point your body to where you're going to take the picture. Now, don't forget, that picture shouldn't be taken exactly as the subject goes past you. If it's a car or a horse or a motorbike, you need to be at that 45-degree angle. So I'm sat looking at the screen, and I've just seen Avril's comment. So I'm sat looking at the screen, and if the car was straight in front of me, that's the wrong position to take the picture. Whoops, just knocked my setup here. So you need to be looking, as I'm looking now, to take the picture. Now, if the car or bike or the horse is coming from the left, you then need to turn your body with your camera. You half press the shutter on constant focusing, and you pan with the subject, constantly moving at the same speed. And when the camera gets straight in front of your body, click and keep it pressed and follow it all the way through. So pick it up, keep following, and don't stop following. Keep following it all the way through. Where to stand? Make sure that you get that position that is prime to your subject. So whatever you're doing, and this depends upon the sport, get at that angle that shows the subject off so that it is absolutely spot on. If you showed that picture to that person, they would say, wow, look at that. That's a great picture. Whereas if you take them on, like we said a minute ago, straight at the camera here, all they would see is one side of the face. So consequently, they might say, it's not a bad picture. Yeah, it's all right. But just get that picture that makes them stand out. So when to press the shutter? Start pressing the shutter early. Don't wait until that moment when you're in that prime position. You should be taking the picture from there, click, 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 and keep going through. So make sure that you travel all the way through with the picture. That's why you take multiple pictures. So it is vital that the first and the last picture are possibly not going to be the best pictures. They're possibly going to be your throwaway ones. Sometimes, I must admit, the first one and the second one are the ones that you keep. But do get a range. You do need, for those who weren't here earlier, do make sure that you take at least 4, 5, 6 pictures and then choose possibly 3 of the best pictures. So when to stop panning, I've just said that. At the end, follow it through. And when you've taken your 5 or 6 pictures, take your finger off. Get ready for the next pictures. Don't always, and people make this mistake, don't always finish taking the pictures as you've been panning and then put your camera down, have a look at your camera and start looking at your pictures. If you do that, you've just missed another 5 pictures. You know, there could have been 5 more cars gone past. There could have been 2 more horses gone past. Wait until you've got a definite break to check your pictures. So do make sure that you are checking your pictures when there's no action. You do not want to see, or I should say, you do not want to miss any of the action. Right, next slide. So on we go. The next slide you should be looking at is back to some more basics, setting the camera up. Let me just have a look at 1 or 2 of these that's popping up on the side here. Avril reckons it's good to have a sandwich. Jim's just said 19. Jill said I should keep my eyes open when we went to photograph the motorbikes. Well, it does help to keep both eyes open. You should, as you're panning through the shot, you should have, and this is not easy, you have to get used to it, but you keep both eyes open, because one eye should be looking through the lens at the exact spot that you're going to take the picture, and the other eye should be checking to make sure that everything's okay with the riders and that there's nothing coming up behind or anything's going to happen that's going to spoil the picture. So, you know, do check that and make sure that it's all going to be right, and try and keep both eyes open. It isn't always easy, and if you're left eye leading, it's nigh on impossible, because then myself, I'm right eye leading, so I look through the shutter with this eye. So consequently, if I'm looking through this, I can keep this eye open and I can see what's happening. But if you're left eye leading, the right eye is now hidden by the camera. So consequently, not always possible. Right. Graham's just said Rob Trek is streaming live now, but I'm still here. Well, thank you very much, Graham. That's absolutely appreciated. Sam said, I can't see any slides. Have you switched them on, Doc? You should go to the, as per the instructions, you should go to the Dropbox folder. You then go to the external comps folder, and in there you'll see a file called sports photography. In there is all of the pictures, and we're on slide number 17. Just for anybody who's joined recently and I didn't hear right at the very beginning, these slides are just JPEGs of the slides that I would have shown had we all been together. And of course, it would have come up line by line as we went along. So they're in Dropbox, exit comps. Yeah, that's something I'm watching on YouTube. Yeah, we're on YouTube. So you open Dropbox as well and split your screen. That was also in the explanation originally. So just minimize your two screens that you're looking at to half of the screen each. We don't have, just to let you know at this stage, we don't have, because we're a new channel, we don't have enough subscribers to be able to do what they call live streaming with a video or a screen at the moment. I am looking into being able to use encoding software to show you my desktop, and then what you would be able to do with that, it would put me down as a little screen in the bottom right hand corner, and you would be able to then see your whole screen. But I'm still working on that. It's all new to me, so do bear with us until we get there. Didn't know we all are. Yes, we are. Yeah, somebody looked in Dropbox. Use it. Something. Anyways. Yep, right. No, nothing else to report on. Right. Back to some more basics, setting up the camera. I managed to get that down without spilling it. Dependent on the weather, you can choose either shutter or f-stop priority. If you want to make sure that it stays on 2.8, you could choose, in a good weather day, you could choose 2.8 and let your shutter speed take care of itself. Taking care to make sure that that shutter speed doesn't go below the focal length of the lens. So if it's 400mm lens, just make sure it doesn't drop below that. If that 400mm lens is on a crop sensor camera, then you need to be at least 600 or 700 thousandths of a second shutter speed. Right, shutter priority. You can do it on shutter priority if you want, and you can set it that way round and let the f-stop do what it wants. If you're happy at that, do it the way that you want to do it. Have a go at both ways. Whichever way you feel you want to do it, you have a go. So f-stop priority, once again, as I say, shutter priority, f-stop priority, whatever you want to do, you take your choice. But make sure that shutter priority, that shutter speed is at the right speed. You need your camera on constant focus. On a Canon, it's A1 servo, focus tracking, constant focusing. It has various names, but it means that as you track the subject, it means that it's constantly changing as the subject moves backwards and forwards. So let's jump this minute to something like bird photography, wildlife photography. If you lock on to something with your camera and you've got half a press, if you're on single point focus and you're on single focus, that will mean that it's locked on at that second in time. As the animal moves or the subject moves, it's going to be out of focus as soon as it's moved. So it's got to be on constant focusing so that it's constantly taking new readings, both in the focusing and the exposure, because you need the focusing and the exposure to be correct. If they turn a little bit one way or the other, it's got to be right. So it's got to be constantly focused, constantly exposed. And that on constant focusing and constant exposure will then give you the right exposure and the right focus. Click, you've got the picture. Right, the next one there. You need to set multiple exposure. So these two go together really. So if you've got it on constant focus, then you need it always on multiple shot. So constant focus, it's constantly zooming in, not zooming in and out, but the focus is working in and out all the time. And then your shutter, you want it on multiple so that you get 4 or 5 pictures so that you at least get 1 or 2 that's good ones. Right. On more modern cameras, you'll need to choose your focus mode. What I'm saying by that is that on modern cameras, you can have lots of focus methods. You can choose a number of focus points. You can use the whole 200 focus points. You can use a tracking method. You can use a cluster of focus. There's a big wide variety, and that's the sort of things I explain to people when I do the training sessions. You know, you have to make sure that you get all of these factors right to get this moving subject. If it stood still, that doesn't matter. You know, that's fair enough. You know, it's still, it's not going to move. So consequently, you're going to get a good picture. But if it's moving, you've got to get these factors right. So, right, on to the next screen. The next slide is motorsport. Motorsport can be easier, can be more difficult. Motorsport is predictable. You know that they're coming from the left-hand side across you to the right, or they're coming from the right across you to the left. So you can set yourself up to be in the right position for when that vehicle goes past you. All you've got to do is pick it up early, half a press, follow it, because of course this half a press means that it's constantly focusing and constantly exposing to the right exposure all the time. Half a press, pan through with it and take the picture at the position wherever you want it, and you've lined it up at that roughly that 45 degrees. The importance of positioning yourself is critical, really. If you end up going to take the picture in a position where you've got your body twisted, so I will move a little bit. So if you're pointing that way and you end up taking the picture over here, your body's all twisted, so consequently you're not comfortable. So you know, do make sure that the time that you want to be pressing that shutter is in that position where you're pointing at to get the best 45-degree angle or the angle you want. So right, shutter speeds. You can use a shutter speed. So it does mean that you need to get a shutter speed which, if you want it to blur the background, you have to slow the shutter speed down. So if I say to you, right, you've got a 400 lens on, you're doing motorsport, but I want you now, instead of using on your crop sensor camera, instead of doing it at 7/100ths of a second, I want you to bring it down to 1/100th of a second. Now, what you've got to do then is you've got to get really good at your panning. So your panning has to be smooth, it has to be accurate, and you have to have the half press all the time. Now, when you do that, it'll give you blurred wheels on the car, the bike, whatever. It'll give you movement in the background. Everything will go blurred. All the grass will go blurred. And if there's any arm cove or any lines on the tracks, that's all going to go blurred. So try the slower shutter speeds to get that blurring effect instead of freezing the subject. If you freeze the subject in motorsport, they don't like it. They like to see the wheels going round and a bit of blur in the background. You'll see some examples in a minute. Dynamic angles. If you've got a dead flat track, take your picture with the camera pointing down to the left. That's if the car's coming from the right. So if it's coming from the right, point your camera down and hold it like that to the left. When you then look at the picture correctly, the car's going uphill. So it makes it look a lot more dynamic. So if it's coming from the other way, of course, lean it to the right, lean it down to the right. Then when you put it up, it's looking like it's going uphill. So, right, we'll go on to the next one. Check your background. Always, it doesn't matter what type of photography you're doing, check that background. Make sure that it's clean. There's no things that afterwards you're going to say, oh, look at that background. I'm going to have to get rid of that. I'm going to have to erase it or clone it over or whatever. Make sure you get the right position right from the word go. You know, look at your backgrounds. Right, on to the next slide. We're now on slide 19, the two motorbike shots here. So anything to do with motocross, motorsport, just try and catch the action just as it's happening. So if you've got the three bikes there, the one on the top left, then I just caught them just as they're coming over the top of the hill. So they're all off the ground. It shows the action and it shows the competitiveness of the image. Always leave extra room in front than behind. You know, do make sure that there's extra room in front for the vehicles to move into. Once again, as I've said, all of these images are taken as they are. So these pictures haven't had anything done to them. But the one there, bottom right, as you can see, because of the panning effect and the slow shutter speed, all of the spokes and the background, everything's blurred, but the rider's nice and sharp. So, you know, that's how you get the slow shutter speed, but you get the blur into the picture. Next slide, 3. These I just put in just to make sure that if you're taking the pictures of motorbikes, motocross bikes, then always try and get it so the front wheel is higher than the back wheel. If you get it on the way down, if it's going in the downward slant, they're not as good at pictures. You know, from my point, when I was selling them, they didn't sell half as well. People don't like them. They like to see the action going up, not down. So just 3 pictures there just for you to see. The higher, try and leave the ground in so that they can see how high they are, because they want to see. It shows the height of the bikes off the ground. So just make sure you show that. As I say, pictures all as taken, hence the reason this middle one's a little bit dark. Right, next slide. We're getting towards the end. We've got 10 to go. Another few motorbikes. The top one there, you can see there's a slight blur in the background and in the wheels. It's got a lean on. You've got contact to the eye. You know, you can see that through the visor. You can see the head of the person sort of thing. We've got that blur on the arm, not the arm cove, the coloured parts on the back there. And we've got a lot of room for the rider to move into. The sidecar, I did exactly what I told you a minute ago. I tilted the camera slightly to the left so that when I put it upright, it looks like they're going uphill. That was on a level piece of track at Cadwell. So it does just give you that dynamic effect. Next slide, picture or slide 22. Another couple of motorbikes, well, quad and a motorbike. The one on the left, some of you will remember from years ago, Sue and Graham, that and probably some of the others, we had a competition that you had to do 3 pictures, one of a square, one of a triangle, and one of a circle. And this was my circle one. And we had to show them as a panel of 3. And so this was my attempt. No idea where it came. I can't remember. So, but that was my attempt at that on quad bikes. The actual, if you've got some dust coming up the back on quad bikes or the motorbikes, then it just shows a little bit more dynamic. If you can grab a shot like the one on the right, where this guy, he was going round and round, and every time he tried to get higher off the seat so that we was taking the pictures. Now, on this occasion, I had no room at all. And I remember that it was, Judge didn't like it. I've just seen what Graham put. He remembers. The picture was taken with a 24-70 lens. So it was a close-up. I was stood at the side of the track and just took it with a short lens. Another idea for a competition, Avril says. Moving on, the next slide, slide number 23, football, kids football. I say kids football for the simple reason that's what I made my money out of. So it's one that that did do very, very well for me. Settings, f-stop, camera orientation, ISO. So I want to blur the background. I want the single player. That's what I'm aiming to get the picture of. The single player or the tackle or something like that. So I use the f-stop 2.8, keep it down as low as I can. Camera orientation, I want the single person. I don't want half the pitch in it, so I just do it in the portrait orientation. The ISO, you just have to balance to make sure that you get the picture. So it is a balancing act. Keep the ball in the picture. If the footballer, whether it be kids, whether it be an adult, if they've just kicked the ball and it's been gone out the picture, all you've got is somebody with a leg going through the air. So make sure you get the picture with the ball leaving the foot. Now, it doesn't matter if the ball's blurry a bit, because that's the just the speed it's leaving the toe of the footballer. So that's not too much of a worry. Trying to take the picture when the kids have their head up, looking where to kick. When the kids are looking at the ground and they're looking at the ball all the time, all you've got is not a ball patch, but all you've got is the top of the head. So try and get it when they've just looked up, so that they're looking where they're kicking the picture, kicking the ball, kicking the picture, kicking the ball. Pitch size and what amount of that pitch can you cover. Make sure when you start, depending what you want, do you want the action photos halfway up the pitch? Do you want the goal pictures? Do you want just your team? If you want your team and you want them going in, then you need to be down on the other team's half, so that they're always coming towards you then. They're not running backwards. So you need them coming to try and get the goal. So you want to be down on the opposition's side of the pitch. If you want the goals, then you've got to go down the goal end. But of course, all you get is the kicking of the goal. And if you're not careful, you always get somebody in front of the person who's trying to kick. So it is a harder shot, that one. As I put there at the bottom, goals or game. That's the question. You have to decide what you want on the day. Where to stand around the pitch, that goes with whether you want goals or games. So next slide, the slide 24. When you're taking these action pictures, don't forget all the aspects of the game. The first one on the left there is the tackle shot. So get them tackling. You know, the young lad in the white and the black there, he's off the ground. You know, he's trying to avoid the other lad getting his toe into the ball. So he's off the ground. That's a good tackling shot. The next one is the goal kick. Goal kicks always look good. Got his eye on the ball. He's kicking it away. So he's you know, in the action shot. Always leave that little bit of more room if you can for them to move into. And then, of course, the one on the right there, the celebration shot. When they've scored, make sure you've got that celebration shot of them all jumping up in the air, greeting each other, etc., etc. So make sure that you get that happy, smiley shot as well. Next slide, slide 25. I've put these in because of what I've just said again. They're the different shots, throw it in shots. This one, I would crop if I was selling that, of course, because it's a little bit too far away. But that would have been the full extent of my lens at that time. So I'm just trying to get this lad doing the throw in because it's something different. So then if you've got anybody close to you, this good close-up portrait type shot, they always go well, and people like them. If at all possible, it would have been nice. I couldn't do it, but just to have total green grass behind him instead of that little dark line across the top above his head. The one on the right, it's always a good goer again. The one that's coming straight towards you, you've got the full face for mum and dad. If it's an adults game, it's the same. You know, you've got a couple of players just tackling each other, so it works well. On to the next slide. Slide 26, you should be on now. Focus points, multi-point or single point. The single point, if you're good enough to use a single point, use the single point and use the single point in the center. That will always mean that the individual is in the center of the picture, yes, but that's the most accurate and it's the quickest point of any of your focus points. Now, modern cameras have cross-type points on a lot of their points nowadays, whereas the center point in the old days was the most accurate. You have got extra nowadays, but they're in bunches around the focus system. So do have a look at your book and see where yours are. If you're good enough to use a single point, use a single point. If you're not, use a clump of 5 or 9. Really, you don't want any bigger than a 9-point clump. If you do get a bigger clump than 9, what will happen? It'll start locking onto other things within the image, and it always goes for the most contrasty point in the image. So it might not be the player that you want it to be. So do be careful. Choose your focus points wisely. Possibly a 5, which means the cross, because you've got one top, one bottom, one either side, and one in the center. That's probably as good as anything, really. I always used to use single point because of the amount that I'd done, etc. So it's up to you, but don't use a big cluster. So if you want, it does say there, which point where. If you know for motor cars that they're always coming from the right and they're always going to go past, and you want the actual head of the person, the driver, the rider, whatever it may be, to be the main focal point, which is obvious, of course, then you could move your focus point slightly to that side. If they're coming from the right, that'll mean your focus points are always going to be around the head. So that would mean that that is going to be the sharpest point all the time. And it's going to be the point that's most in focus. So if it's a car, etc., don't forget, just use a slightly higher f-stop so that you get a little bit more depth down the side of the car or the bike. Which point where, as I've just said, that's the one there. Upper range cameras and multi-autofocus systems. This is just a little screenshot off a back of a Canon camera. There is numerous amounts of settings that you can set. You can set the tracking sensitivity, you can set the acceleration, deceleration settings. There is tons and tons. And as you can see on that particular little diagram there, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 different ones. And then within those 7, there's another 3 within each 7 that you can change. So photography is not an easy thing. So don't get down if you don't get it right the first time when you try something new. So just go into the camera, have a look at it, see what there is to change, and make sure that you have a play around to see what you can change. Next slide, 27. We've got 3 to go. Shooting through. If you do as I did with the single focus point, if you imagine your single, look at that picture, and if you imagine looking or your focus point being dead in the center, the focus point has what we call shot through. It's gone into the background because we've got one player to the right of that center point and one to the left. You're probably thinking, well, why is the image sharp? Because I have my focus point in the center, but I have my focus point on the ground. So my focus point is where their feet are. So that means it's focused in the right position for the focal plane of where they're running. So I know that whether I actually get it on their tummy, on their chest, they are going to be in focus because they're within the focal plane that I'm focusing on, which is the feet. So that's my little trick. The next one on the next slide is slide number 28. Decisions to be made when you get there. We're just getting to the end now, so think focus triangle. You all know about the focus triangle. That's not a triangle. That's it. If you think ISO, f-stop, shutter speed, you have to decide what is critical for you. You then have to start balancing the other elements up to make sure that your shutter speed is right, that your f-stop's right, and you're at the lowest ISO that you possibly can get. So make sure that you think of that photography triangle and get it right. Do you have enough light to use the f-stop that you want? Think about it. Is it a shutter speed day? That's TV on a Canon, S for most other things. Don't know. Well, I do know why Canon use TV. It's time value. That's what it stands for. ISO manual or auto manual. If you've got something, the motor car, the horse, the football player, the rugby player, if they're running in and out of a shadow, then you could try putting it on auto ISO. But if the camera has auto ISO, it will always take the easiest route. It will always go for the higher ISO to take the easier route. And often you don't want the camera to take that higher route. So just be careful with auto ISO that it's not shooting it too high. That's going to give you noise in your images in the dark areas. White balance, auto versus a preset sunshade. tungsten or sunny or one of the others. White balance is all about the color temperature of the light that's coming from the source. I haven't said the sun there simply because at the end of the day, we're not always in the sun. We could be somewhere under fluorescent light. We could be under sodium light. We could be under tungsten light. All of these are at a different color temperature. And you'll always remember back to the days when we had our pictures come back from Boots. We used to say, oh, they're a bit orange. Well, it was because the white balance just wasn't right for the pictures that we took. So nowadays you can set that white balance. You can leave it, if you're doing raw work and you leave it in auto, and you leave it in auto, then you can change the white balance in software afterwards. So you can change it up and down to get the color temperature right, or you can use a color picker to get the right color balance. Right, the next one. Find your best position for your sport. We've said that already. It's just a reminder to get there early. Make sure that you get your position. Make sure that you get the position that you want, not having to go behind somebody else because they got there before you. Make sure you get where you want and get it there early. So next slide. Finally, what memory card? You want to be looking for sport photography for a fast speed card. The fastest you can afford on all occasions. Memory cards of different speeds. The speeds are donated by the MBS. So I personally have always bought SanDisk cards. They've served me well in the use that I give them, which is rough, over the years, and that's 14 years. I've used SanDisk cards, and I've had one failure in that time. And Jim will tell you, because Jim's done work with me in the past, and he'll tell you they get used and formatted and used time and time again. And as such, you need something reliable. Cheap cards don't cut it if you're wanting them to be permanent fixtures with you. So cheap, 16 gigabyte, £6, read speed about 15 megabits a second. It's no good. You don't want anything down there nowadays. You need to go up to the best that you can afford. I always buy the next ones down, either 32 gig or 64 gig, 300 megabytes. Certainly minimum nowadays, I buy 170 megabyte cards, megabytes second. Some of them go right up to 300. Now, if you was buying a card 64 gig at 300 megabytes per second, you're probably now looking at somewhere in the region of 150 to 175 pounds per card. So it's an expensive hobby, this photography. So that is my lot for this evening. Hope you've enjoyed it. All I've got is, have I missed anything? And if you want to type any questions, we're a little bit earlier than a camera club night. I've just looked down at my phone, which is good. I intended to finish at 9 o'clock-ish, so it's worked out quite well. But if you've got any questions, then just type them in there, and we'll try and answer them whilst you're on. I'll just have a slurp just in case anybody wants to type. Because after 2 hours of talking, it's throat's getting a bit dry. So thank you very much, Graham, for saying so. Yeah, that's very much appreciated. And for Bob, Bob, don't thank Neil. He's the one who got me doing this. So, don't thank him for it. Very good first time appearance. Yeah, no, that's very good of you all to say so. Thanks very much indeed for watching. I'm just looking down to the right because that's where my mouse is to click the button to end the stream. So I'm going to say good night to you all. Thank you very much for watching. I'm sure that some of you counted the numbers and what we got up to earlier and what numbers we got up to in the second half. All of the comments are now just popping up, so I just will read them. Enjoyed your talk. Thank you very much. Jim, Ray, good job. Thanks very much. Paul, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Paul. Mark, thank you very much indeed. Neil, yeah, you're bloody doing it next time. No, Avril, thanks very much. Caroline, thanks very much. Jill, Bob, it is good to not have to drive home after a couple of beers. That's very true. Yeah. The only thing is, I'm still on my water. So got up to 20 by the end. That's very good, Jim. Thanks for keeping account. Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Tony. You virtually knew what I was talking about, Tony, as we went through it. You've done it yourself, and I know you thoroughly enjoyed it. Found it difficult at times, but yeah, it's good when you get it right. Will we be able to do these when we can meet and I'm still stuck? Yes, what we're looking to do, just to finish on for a club, is to see how these go over the next 2 or 3 weeks. And as you heard earlier, I've got 2 or 3 organised already. I've got the talk on the panels, how to produce a panel, and I've got then I'll be doing the judging on the competition that we said, which is an open competition. We shall set up a folder and send you an email out of how to do that. So that's another one. We'll be able to do these. Possibly, I might not say, Paul, that it'll be as long. It might not be a 2-hour one. But the other thing that I was going to say is a couple of people have sent me in already questions. Now, I do apologise that I haven't answered those questions yet, but I have been a bit involved in trying to get my head around this. And at my age, it takes your head a bit of getting around it. So, do apologise for not getting back to you about your questions that you've sent in. But I was thinking of having this sort of a session, possibly, I don't know, once a month or whatever, where people can sign in and we'll talk about things. We'll jot our questions down in the live chat and we can answer those questions. If I don't know the questions, we've got other members in the club who are extremely knowledgeable about their cameras and about photography in general. So you'll be able to drop it in the live chat if you know the answer and I don't, and then I'll be able to read it out so the others can see it and we can expand on that. So thanks, Ryan. Sam, thank you for the time. Very impressed modern technology. Thanks, Sam. Paul, I will be able to do this. Well, yeah, thanks. I think that's all right. Thanks from Jan. Yeah, first time I've met Jan, even though it's virtual. Yes, you can. It is one way of attending a meeting, isn't it? So, yeah, that's good. Thank you, really enjoyed it. Stay safe. Elaine, now that I know really Holly is Elaine, but you know what I mean. Thank you, Elaine. Paul, thanks very much. Right, I am definitely going to sign off now. We've just popped back past 9. So thank you all very much for watching. Until next Thursday, take care, stay safe, and make sure you keep washing your hands. Take care. Good night.